All right, Robert McField, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
No problem at all. No problem at all, Chris. I appreciate it, buddy.
So, you have one of the most fascinating stories that have ever heard, and so I'm super happy to get to talk to you so you can give your perspective on it. And one of your former coaches a few years ago, I think in the early days of the COVID pandemic, I was talking to him on the phone, and he just brought it up as one of just the hey, here, check this story out, and told me about this kid named Robert McField. And so I'm gonna set the stage of what I know and kind of just let you take it from there, right? So you were a highly ranked football recruit. You're from St. Louis and went to Normandy High School, right? And then signed with the University of Minnesota and went up there your freshman year and got into some trouble back home. And from there had kind of just a wild pass. So let's go back to that spot and just kind of start from there.
Okay, that's awesome. All right, so like you said, I grew up in St. Louis. I really in St. Louis, you kind of have like two fractures of it. You have the city, and then you have the county, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the school I went to was in Normandy. You called it down. Was like in the middle of it both. So literally, you can go either way in life, you know. But that wasn't the school I got in trouble at. If I reverse it a little bit more, when I was a freshman in high school, I mean, literally, I don't know what I was thinking. I got put out as a freshman for fighting, and I completely like blacked out and accidentally push my teacher out of the way. This was at a school called Hazelwood East, and they did not allow that. So, I was on the first thing smoking out of there. And Normandy was a school that, was a little bit on the rougher side. So, and my mom worked there. So she ended up pulling some strings and getting me up there. So by the time my sophomore year came around, I went to Normandy. Now, I didn't play football at this time. At this time, I felt like I was going to be the next Michael Jordan, right? I felt like I was going to be a basketball star. So, and I practiced a lot. I did a lot of things one on one, but it just wasn't quite picking up when it was team ball time. So when my junior year came around, I never forget, and I don't know if I'll probably share this so she can see it. I give her credit. Her name is Miss Plummer. She was a security guard at our school. She said something to me that is very popular now, and I've heard it a lot now, but she said it to me the first time when I was a junior high school. She said, Robert, don't put all your eggs in one basket. She was talking about basketball, right? She said, you don't got no letters. Nobody's coming to knock on your door. You need to play football. And for some reason, that was it. Because I always I played football when I was younger, but I always shied away from it. It was very aggressive. It was a barbarian sport. You either were going to be a dog or you weren't going to be a dog. And the people that weren't a dog, they weren't good. So I said, okay, I'm ready and I'm ready to be a dog. So my junior year came around and my first practice, I never forget, I was standing on the sideline the entire time. They were just scrimmaging. There was there wasn't much, I don't want to rag on my coaches, but there wasn't much at that time structure. Right. One of my coaches is now like a state champion, or his name is Coach Torrey. He's like a state champion now at like a school out in the suburbs of St. Louis. But they were just scrimmaging and scrimmaging and scrimmaging. And I was just standing on the sideline. I'll never forget the last four plays. I said, go ahead, go in, Robert. When I went in, I didn't know what to do. I was like literally looking at my teammates like, what do I do? And I just remember that everybody just screaming and pointing, just go, go, go. So I put my hand down. And the first play, it was just kind of like a play that was over in 2 seconds. The second play was over in a little bit, but the offensive tackle, he started yappering at me a little bit. And that kind of got my fire lit. So then the next play after that, I ran through him, boom, pushed him, got him out the way. And I hit the running back so hard, like everybody on the sidelines, everybody on the field, and people that were in band practice that were on the field over, like were like, whoop. And then I started after that. There was no more sideline. Yeah, there was no more sideline, right? So I made it through my junior year. I had, I think, 10 sacks through 4 games. 10 sacks through 4 games, and everybody was looking now. Like, I hit the radar. I was on, I was 6'5", 6'4". I was fast. I was big, I was strong, but I tore my ACL the fifth game. So I had to get that fixed. So when my senior year came around, I was still hanging around my old friends at Hazelwood East, right? I was still hanging around those guys. And those guys were doing the things that got me put out of school. Right. But a lot of these athletes and a lot of these kids struggle with the same thing. They don't know when to get away. They don't know when to step away. A lot of these athletes go down for crimes, for guns. You know, John Moran is a perfect example. He doesn't have any crimes, but it's a lifestyle that athletes want to live, that want to hold up the guns, symbol and do these things. It's very addictive. I don't know why, but I was still very drawn to the streets. So we end up, I take full accountability now. We end up getting into some trouble. I don't know how much detail you want me to get into about it, but we end up getting into some trouble, and I we got away. And when we got away, the next day at school, I don't know how, I'm in English class. It's 11 o'clock a.m. At this time period, I'm in the swing of my senior year. I'm nationally ranked. I'm getting school visits, University of Miami, Ohio, Minnesota. All these schools are coming to see me. So I'm feeling very good about myself. So on the next day after we committed that crime, and I'll say what it was second degree robbery. And in Missouri, you have something called armed criminal action, meaning that you use a weapon. One of the school student, I forgot what it was, but it's the students that help the office deliver messages and notes. One of those kids came to my classroom, and I remember thinking like, oh, it's another school. He said, hey, Robert, come down. They want to see you in the office. And like I said, I remember thinking, hey, it's another school. Okay. Who is it? Is it Texas A&M? Is it Texas Tech? I'm walking, I'm strutting, I'm confident. But when I walk into the office, it wasn't any school. There were guys with suits, badges, and guns on their hips. I immediately realized that I was in trouble. They ended up putting me in handcuffs. And I remember I told you it was 12 o'clock in ELA. So 12 o'clock is at lunchtime at pretty much most schools in America. So as soon as they put me in my handcuffs in the office and walked me out of the office in the main hallway, the lunch bell rang and students just got to pouring in the hall. Now, what everybody knew me as was Robert McField, the athlete, the good kid. But at that moment, uh, there was an uproar. The kids start following us, like the FBI. Nah, Kai kept calling them the FBI. It really wasn't the FBI. It was detectives, actually. They told the kids to move out the way, put me in a car, in the truck. I lay down in the back of the truck because I didn't want to be seen, and they pulled off. So they took me to jail, and I spent 4 days in jail before I was able to bond out. My auntie, Sonia Simpson, God bless her, her and my mom had to put up their house because they didn't have the money for bond. And if they put up their house and I run, their house gets seized. They put up their house and they released me. And, I don't know if I ever thanked my coaches for this at the time. One of them, the main coach, was Coach Jackson. He just passed away. Coach Torrey, and there are a slew of other coaches that were there as well. But when I was gone for 4 days, I missed every single practice. I told them what was going on, and they still let me play, because they knew that that was my only shot to making it. I think they seen and they said this can be another black kid that goes down to the system, or we can try to help elevate this kid. And I think they tried to help elevate me. And there are three type of criminals. I always say this. There are three type of criminals that learn their lesson. The first criminal is they change as soon as the handcuffs click, right? As soon as the handcuff, I'm done. I'll never do this again. Then you have the second criminal that when the handcuffs click, it may take a while for them to get it. Maybe they need to hear their kid on the phone crying, saying, Daddy, I need you, I miss you. Or maybe it's a loved one that just passed away and they can't be there, but they learn. And the third type of criminal is the one that never changes. And when I end up going to a level 5 maximum security prison, I ran into a lot of guys that ain't gonna change. All right, but just along to back up, when I was walking out of school, my cousin Alex Simpson, my first cousin, she was in my school too. She was clueless as well, right? She seen her cousin that we ride to school together every day. She don't know what I'm doing, outside on my free time. She's screaming like, "What do I do?" I said, "Call my mom." So now I think about this, and I often apologize to my mother because my mother put her name on the line to get me to come to her school. She was the middle school teacher. I was at the high school. And she had to hear from other people at other school that I was being arrested and walked out in handcuffs. Like, what a horrible feeling is that? But nevertheless, she never judged me. She never judged me. She was always there and she was understanding because I think deep down she knew that this was serious. Fast forward, I get through the season, right? I'm going through the legal process. Nobody knows. I'm getting all these offers, and I end up accepting the University of Minnesota. University of Minnesota, because Lawrence Maroney, he was a football player at Normandy that was huge. He was a running back. He went to University of Minnesota. He kind of gave me a call and kind of gave me a pep talk and say, "Hey," because my biggest fear was, would I get a shot? Would I get a shot, or do they already have their mind made up of who's playing? And he said, "You're going to get a shot." I ended up choosing University of Minnesota. So, but before I end up leaving to go to University of Minnesota, my lawyer that my mom had spent tons of money on came, told me to come in to one of the hearings. And the hearings aren't that important, right? You're in and out. But every hearing, I'm suited and booted, man. I want to give the best impression ever, right? I want them to see me and say, this is a good kid. But he pulled me in a room and he said, "Man, hey, I've been working very hard on this. And the best I can do is 25. 25 days, 25 months. Like, what are we talking about? 25 years. What? 25 years? And in Missouri, you have a law where you have to serve 85% if you have a violent crime. So I think, let me see how old I would have been. I was probably 17 at that time or 18 at that time. And then I would have did 21 years, so I would have been 39 or 40 years old leaving prison. That wasn't an option. So what we did was we filed to have a switch of counsel. And his name was Scott Rosenblum. And Scott Rosenblum was a lawyer that got off a lot of, people. One of his famous cases was getting off Leonard Little. He was an NFL defensive end for St. Louis, where he was convicted of vehicle manslaughter, where he killed a woman, and I believe that the daughter or the son was in the back seat, lived, and he witnessed their parent die, and he ended up getting 90 days and playing football that season. So we were like, that's the guy we need. So while we switched, I went to University of Minnesota. There wasn't much that happened at University of Minnesota. I was just going through the process. I would say the biggest part that happened is that while I was at University of Minnesota, and this is very vindictive, I still don't know why they did this. The prosecutor's office called the University of Minnesota because they didn't know. Me and my mom decided that it was best to keep it a secret because if they knew, then no, I wouldn't get a scholarship. I wouldn't be getting out of St. Louis. So they called the University of Minnesota. I'll never forget my coach, Mitch Browning, preparing for a scrimmage. I'm putting on my shoulder pads, everything. And then he said, "Hey, Robert, come here." So I followed him like, "Dang, what's going on?" Because Mitch Browning was an offensive guy. So why is he calling a defensive guy? So when I go sit down in a room, he just pushes play. And the prosecutor message played. And it was like nails on a chalkboard. It was like nails on a chalkboard. Like I couldn't believe it. And from that moment, they suspended me. They told me that I wouldn't have a perfect, I mean, I wouldn't have an opportunity to play again until it got cleared up. But they were going to keep it under wraps too. So University of Minnesota handled it well, I think, because they could have just kicked me out. They could have just said, "Bye, you're gone." Um, so months down the line come, and my lawyer called me to St. Louis because of what I believe is trial time. So when trial time comes, he pulls me to his office before the day of the trial, and he says, "Hey, the best I can do is to get you 12 years. You're going to serve a portion of that, but you're not going to do 85%.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you're going to do it in a medium security prison. He said that. I think he was trying to grease me up a little bit. Now, I went from 25 to 12, 25 with 85% to 12 with not any specific time. As an 18-year-old, I couldn't imagine that. Like, I couldn't imagine 12. 12 just, it hit me like a rock. And he said to me that I was going to get to continue to live my life after this. Like, my life wouldn't be over. And I couldn't hear that at that time. At that time, it was just, my life's over. I'm going to prison. What? But he let me know what the consequences could be. There could be a 40-year sentence. It could be bad. Um, so we decided this was the hardest decision I ever had, in my life. But I decided to take a plea.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't risk it, and I went to turn myself in. There was a lovely lady um, at the University of Minnesota that I got to know as well. But while I was waiting to go turn myself in, her name was Brenda Hall, and she just passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say rest in peace, Brenda Hall. I love you and I miss you every day. I had 2 weeks before I went to go turn myself in. Excuse me. I had 4 weeks before I went to go turn myself in. The day that I got convicted, it got to the University of Minnesota. And before 12 p.m., I was kicked out of my dorm, I was kicked out of school, and I was kicked off campus, and I didn't have anywhere to go. So Brenda Hall came in without knowing me. She knew me through one of my school friends at University of Minnesota at the time. Her name was Sydney Hall. She came around and she said, "Hey, I don't want you to leave yet. I still want you to be in school and finish." That was one of the stimulations they gave me. They didn't tell me that when I got sentenced to 12 years, they let me finish that year. She said I could finish it while I stay at her house. This lady didn't know me from a can of paint. She didn't know me, and she invited me to her home and let me stay while she felt like she can do some good and help. She knew a lot of powerful people in Minnesota. So I never forget my first night staying there. I stayed on the couch. She had like 7 sons, by the way. So I remember being on the couch and cracking my eye open. Like nobody seen me, but I remember like three guys standing over me while I was sleeping. Like, who is this? So I'm pretending to be asleep. I'm like, Lord, Brenda, please come out and clear this up. She ended up coming out. She said, "Oh, that's Robert," and they were all nice to me. They treated me like family after that. But 4 weeks went by and she couldn't help. One thing is, once you get in that legal hole,
Mm-hmm.
it is almost impossible to climb out. It locks its fangs in you. And unless you know somebody very powerful and you have a miracle, you're going to stay in that legal situation until it's done. So, I went to go turn myself in on June 7th, 2011. I mean, excuse me, 2007. And the judge is reading me my rights. My mom is there and Brenda is there. They helped turn me in. I can't stop crying. So before they put me in handcuffs and say, "Hey, go sit over there until we walk you up, ready to take you to the back," I said, "Hey, can I give my mom a hug?" And the judge said, "Hey, it's too late for that," and put me in handcuffs. I remember looking over at my mom and she was just tearing up, man. She was tearing up. She was bawling. But the most sad part was while she was crying, every time I looked, she would smile, right? And when I looked at her, I said, that's my pain right there. That's the pain that I caused. That's what I did. And I should be held accountable for that. I didn't cry completely in that moment. I teared up, but I didn't cry. So when I walked to the back, they put us in handcuffs and then they walked us to the back of the courtroom and then there was a door and that door led to the jail. But I looked up at the window and it was plastered. You couldn't see out of it. It was just plastered. That's when I started bawling. I said, my freedom's gone. I can't even look out a window. My freedom's gone. Now, keep in mind, I was a college kid, right?
Yeah.
As I'm as I'm walking down this thing, crying, bawling, we walked by a cell, a side story. We walked by a cell like full of girls, right? And I'm a kid at that time, and I'm just in college and doing what college kids do. And when I walked by the cell full of girls, I hurry up and wipe my teeth and looked at them like, hey, how y'all doing? How y'all doing? And then as soon as I passed the cell again, cried again.
So, Robert, what was the? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt.
no, no. Jump in anytime, man. Go ahead. I'll go all day.
So, no, that's great stuff. First, so obviously you get, you have to stay in the jail. You get moved to a prison, right? The
Yeah.
medium security facility. What was the first night
It
in
actually
custody?
was a maximum. It was actually a maximum. See, yeah.
Okay.
My lawyer kind of he greased me a little bit to get me to
Yeah.
take the plea,
Okay. Okay.
but it was a level 5 maximum security prison.
Wow.
23 hours of cell in a day and 1 hour out.
Hmm. So not fun times.
Horrible time.
What what was like a typical day?
The typical day, I remember, the typical day was wake up at this time period, but I'm going to say that after I got all my supplies, right? After I got my TV, I got my
Mhm.
CD player, I got everything. First thing I do is I would turn on my TV. And a lot of people probably won't remember this, but there on BET, there was a show called 106 at Park. They used to play 3 times a day, right? So at that point, I would turn on 106 in Park, and then I would start my exercise routine. I would do like 200 push-ups, and then the doors click open for breakfast. I walk to breakfast. I eat breakfast. I walk back to my cell. We hang out in there until lunch comes. Usually me and my cellmate, we're either playing checkers or watching TV, just kind of hanging out. And then we hear that click for lunch. Boom, we hear that click. And even if we don't like the lunch, we're taking that walk.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like we got to get out of here. And then once we walk there, eat our lunch, and come back, then between dinner and lunch, we have rec, right? And rec is either an hour, but every other day we go outside. So it's an hour and a half if we get to go outside. At that time period, even though I'm in prison, I'm still focused on football. I still have this as my vision. So I'm lifting weights. I'm running. People are looking at me crazy. They're looking at me because I'm doing full-fledged gasser tests. I'm doing full-fledged cone drills. They're looking at me like, what is he doing? One of the correctional officers, COs, walked up to me and was like, are you practicing karate? Like, you can't do that in here. I was like, sir, I'm just practicing a little bit of football. My eyes was on the prize. So then after that, I made sure I had enough time to get in the shower. My workouts were usually about 45 minutes to an hour and 10 minutes. And then I would go get in the shower. I would usually eat a little bit of fiber at that time, oatmeal. And then the doors will pop open one more time to go out to dinner. I would walk to dinner, come back, and then I'm usually out by 9 o'clock, 9:30. I wish I could go to sleep at 9:30 now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
wish, man.
so a part that I love about the story, and so out of that sentence, you mentioned earlier that you didn't have to do the full sentence. You ended up doing what, four and a half?
4 years,
Four?
four and a
Yeah.
half years, from 8 to 23.
You were talking about your mom earlier, who seems like an incredible lady,
Yeah.
and the part of the story that I was told that was so cool was that your mom, I mean, just never gave up on you or your football dream, right? And apparently emailed 450 schools
hmm
and at all different levels, and a couple responded.
Yep. It was like 2 or 3, I believe.
Yeah, yeah, and they came and saw you, and then
Yep.
that gave you your chance, right? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So one thing my mom is so amazing. She was an athlete as well. She actually, ran to be in the Olympics. So she knows all about perseverance and still pushing. So when I first went in, she never told me like everything is going to be okay. She just talked to me and talked to me because I don't think she knew. And then I never forget, I don't know what it was for her, but one day she just started saying, you know what? Everything's going to be okay. And then she took the driver's seat to this situation. She took the driver's seat and said, you know what? I'm going to find it. I'm going to make it happen. Like my son is not going to be a statistic. My son is going to have an opportunity. My son is a good kid. He messaged all these schools, all these schools. And at the time, I believe two schools responded, from what I understand. But one of the schools were like heavy on questions, like just asking me like 10,000 things. But there was one school that didn't. There was one school that was completely on board and we didn't understand. I was like, really? They know everything. They want to come see me. So I never forget. My mom set it up. And Coach Chergo was the first one that came see me. Coach Rico. He walked in. I walked through the door and I had these handcuffs on, right? And I never forget. He said his eyes lit up because I was the same size as the door. Like I had an
That's
afro
awesome.
at the time. Yeah, my afro like hit the ceiling. My shoulders were broad. If I'm walking through the door, he was licking his chops. He didn't care nothing about no prison. He was like, this guy's gonna come play some football. So when we first started talking, I believe my grandmother came with him. My grandmother came with him. And we first started talking. Now that I look back, it all makes sense. They never started with football. They always started with life. It was like they were trying to read my character to see if I wanted it. And I'm telling you, Chris, that was nothing I wanted more at that time. I was willing to rip whoever head off that was going to try to stop me and block me at that point. They were gonna go down. And I told him that. I said, God bless the person that tries to stop this. I'm hungry. And he believed me. And after he believed me, he ran down a scholarship. Coach Rico recruited me. He gave me a recruitment speech while I'm sitting in a maximum security prison. I'm like, dude, do you understand? I ain't got nowhere else to go. You all I got. You got me and I got you, brother. So,
That's awesome. That it's so cool that out of all those schools that that they took that chance, right? I mean, because
mhm.
I remember hearing the story from him. He said, "Look, when we because Jeff Sims was the head coach, right?
Yep. And he came to see me as well.
And he came as well, and at Fort Scott, and he mentioned Coach Jericho when he was telling me about this story that they had when he was with Coach Sims a few different guys that had been to prison before, and that they didn't mind doing that because he kind of described exactly what you were saying, like they had been there and wanted to make sure they did everything to make sure they weren't going back, right? And so
Mhm.
I remember he told me that once you got out and once you got to the community college, started playing ball, you got your degree, you play like you graduated, and then you were able to go play college ball from there, right? So let's kind of turn the page towards that a little bit.
Yes, got the degree. I was I was all conference. That shocked me, especially being off that long. I led the team in tackles for loss. I really believe that a lot of those were sacks. Uh,
They
but
shorted you.
yeah, they shorted
Okay.
me. I believe six of those were sacks. But I led the team in tackles for loss and yards for tackles for loss. But I ended up getting a scholarship to go to Pittsburgh State University, home of the Gorillas. Once a gorilla, always a gorilla. So they had a process as well. I actually sat down with the president of the school. He brought me to his office, his nice office, and he knew that he knew that I came to take care of business. He only talked to me for about 5 minutes. I said, man, listen, I've been the place where nobody wants to go. I ain't rushing to go back. You know, I wanted to come do the right thing, and I did. I'll get into the story of what it was like at Pitt, but I ended up getting my first master's degree from there. But with the football situation, it's like the I swear I think because I took off so long, it was like my body, and I jumped right back into it. It was like my body didn't quite respond to it as well because I kept getting nicks and dings.
Mm-hmm.
Nicks and dings there. Nicks and dings because I feel like my body was out of the habit of let's say planting, turning, and twisting, right? But whenever I was able to put a stretch of time together to play, I was the best for sure. So my junior year comes around, and the coach asked me if I wanted to switch to help the team out. Literally, that was it. To tight end. I was like, man, but I wanted to do whatever that can help this team. I knew we had a lot of potential and we had a lot of defensive ends, and I was a good one, but I knew that we needed tight ends and ones that can block and catch.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, fine. We end up going to the playoffs. We were one game away from the national championship. One game away. We almost won that game. I actually caught the touchdown, the 2-point conversion to actually send my team into the overtime. Like this was like one of the last plays of the game because once they got it, they scored. They kicked the field goal and scored, and then our quarterback threw an interception in overtime. But before that, I caught the pass to send us into overtime. And what's so crazy was at practice, I'm always open, right? And when I'm open, it's like the hardest to catch. Yeah, because it's like I'm thinking like, oh, here it come, and I'll drop it, and a lot of people see me drop it and think that I couldn't catch. So we get to the game. I don't know what made this coach so confident to call it in that moment, but he did. And when he called it, it was like I didn't have time to say, hey, wait, are you sure? I couldn't talk to anybody or talk some sense into anybody. So we went out there and there was two tight end set. The other tight end looked at me and kind of gave me that look like, you know it's coming. So the ball hikes, and I remember I do a tight end delay. And a tight end delay is, when you block for 2 to 3 seconds and then you run. It's
Mm-hmm.
like you run off for a route. So I remember blocking for 2 or 3 seconds, and I seen that one of the tight ends run across my face, and that was my cue that when he runs across my face, I need to go. So he ran across my face, and I took off. And I'm gonna tell you this: I don't remember nothing else besides landing with this football in my hand, and everybody in the stadium screaming. I don't remember anything else. That was my last football play ever. That was my last football play ever. So went out with a bang.
Yeah, you did. You did. Now, you also, was this at Pitt State or later? You also had, once again overcame from a health perspective, right? You had a
Hmm.
health scare. Was that at Pitt State or
Yep.
later?
So my junior year, I said that was my last play ever. That wasn't by choice. So my junior year, I was 26, going on 27, and I don't know. And that's kind of like old in Pittsburgh State, you know, college football
College football.
years.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's very old. So I'm always sore at this point.
yeah.
My stomach is always hurting, my shoulders are hurting, my neck's hurting. And I'm like, man, like I'm really getting old, man. Like what the heck is going on? I'm taking Tylenol every day. I'm taking ibuprofen just to get through practices.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm getting through it. I'm getting through the games. The game before that playoff game, I remember that I was in so much pain. I remember taking Tums, ibuprofen, Tylenol, and still being physically uncomfortable. So after I caught that pass, things were on the up, right? I said, okay, because I struggled my first 2 years playing defensive end. I just struggled with injury. I never were able to put years together. But now that I got a whole 2 years to play, I got out the season without any injuries, and I'm making an NFL run at this point. Right. So one of the head coaches told me that a couple teams pointed me out when they come and watch the teams. They point at who they want to watch and what they want to know about. And three teams at that time pointed out to me. I can't remember all of them, but I remember one of them was Atlanta. So I was like, man, I got an opportunity. Because even if I don't have a great season of running and catching and everything, I know that I'm fast. I can do 225 pounds because you have to do that in the draft at least 30 times. And so my numbers were going to be fantastic. I just had to go do something, just go out there and stay healthy and block some people. And I was going to get a shot. And I was telling myself that I may even move to tackle. Because now, if I can run routes and catch, but now I put on about 10 of 20 pounds and then block people, I will be unstoppable. But of course, it didn't work out that way. We started spring training, and all the pain in my body just increased to the point where I couldn't take it anymore. So my girlfriend at the time was a nurse, and I woke up and my right arm was numb, and I was like, I can't feel my arm, and she was like, you need to go to the hospital now. I was like, okay, all right, whatever it could be. So they did scans, and she worked at that hospital that we were at. And she was in the room looking at my scans as they were coming out. And she walked out that room and she said, Robert, I think you got cancer. So I remember snapping at her, like, how can you be so negative? What makes you say that? Because at this time period, you got to keep in mind, I I went to prison and I disappointed a lot of people. A lot of people thought that I was going to make a name for myself and I was going to make my high school and my city proud, but I ended up in a jail cell. So this arc of my story was my redemption. And if I lost it, my redemption was taken away. But not only was my redemption taken away, my character was taken away. Football was my first love ever, besides my mother and family. It was my first love ever. It was the first thing I ever said, I love this. I love it. I want to do it. I want to see it. I want to engage in it. I want to do it while I hang out with my friends. It was everything. So I got one more scan, and the doctor in Joplin, Missouri came in, and his eyes were big as grapefruits. And he said, you need to get out of here now. Like, we got to get you to Kansas City Hospital. You got cancer. And I don't know, I don't recall that nurse, man, but let me tell you something. Shout out to all the nurses because this nurse, I'm not a really big emotional person, right? I'm not like a hugger when I start crying, but this lady hugged me at the perfect time. I felt like an infant in his mother's arms and I was helpless. She hugged me and I melted in her arms. And that hug got me through the next 4 weeks in the hospital, trying to figure out what it was going on. And it turned out to be stage 4 non-Hodgkin lymphoma. And just to kind of give you an update how severe it was and how much I had to push through. Do you remember Eric Berry? Well, viewers may remember Eric Berry for Kansas City Chiefs, a dominant cornerback. He had the same exact cancer that I had, but he had stage 2. I had stage 4. They got the, I guess,
I don't know what that was about.
I know the balloons, I think if you do like some things like this
Oh,
with the iPhone, it makes up. But this is pretty awesome right here. I was about to say,
yeah.
don't make a liar out of me. But yeah, he had stage 2 and I had stage 4. And I credit that not only to the God in the sky, but I also credit that to how much I wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted it so bad that I didn't care what pain I felt. I didn't care what I felt. I was going to dig, claw. I didn't care how much ibuprofen I had to take, how much Tylenol, how much Tums, how much whatever. I was going to make it through this and nothing was going to stop me. And it's almost like a gift and a curse. You can push so hard, but sometimes you do need to listen to your body. Sometimes you do need to stop. And that's kind of like how I discovered I had cancer.
Yeah. So you obviously, thankfully, beat it. How long did it take before you got a clean bill of health, I guess you could say?
In total, from when I had it, so when I went to the doctor, they told me that I had been playing. I mean, I have had it. Well, how much it was in my system, they said since about August, and it was a coincidence because what happened in August was football started.
Yep.
So I literally played the entire season with
Oh,
cancer.
yeah. Wow.
So it ended in August. So in total, no, excuse me, September. So in total is 11 months. I had to go through 7 months of intensive chemotherapy. I was given an option that I could do like an easier one for my body and it would take longer, or I can do one that is like excruciating. The first week I take it, I will be useless. I will be bedridden. I wouldn't want to get up. I wouldn't want to eat. I wouldn't want to move. At that point, it was fighting poison with poison.
Yeah.
And in week 2, I would start getting better. I would start getting up, moving around, being a little bit more social. In step 3, week 3, I would start feeling like myself again. Uh, and then I restarted. Back to the ground I go. And I did that 8 times. I did that 8 times. So 3 weeks times 8. So I don't know how many months that was in total, but it ended in September.
Wow. So, man, that's a lot. And I want to go back to something that you said earlier, like a big picture thought. and you're talking about your redemption, right? And so football ended up ending for you because of that illness. But the cool thing now is that, you played for Pitt State. They actually ended up hiring you, right?
Yeah,
To work
they
there.
did. Yeah,
And
uh-huh.
you started speaking, like you mentioned earlier. You do motivational speaking, and now you have this awesome story. So I hope that you feel like you have redeemed yourself, right? From
Yeah.
even without the football piece.
Yeah, it was a roller coaster because a lot of football athletes, when I go to speak to the athletes, I always have to tell them, I always have to compare the moments in sports and moments in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Signing on to buy a new home is like a alley hoop dunk. A touchdown catch is like holding your child for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that correlate in life that are so much more sweeter once you make it through it. But because this is our first goal ever, especially the ones that have been doing it since they were 6, 7, this is our first goal ever. So in a sense, this is our first failure, our greatest failure, I would say I would say. And in my sense, where it was hurtful was I had a shot. I had all the numbers. So when I lost it, what do I do? Pitt State hired me on to speak to people and created that lane and that passion for me. This was something that they asked me to do, and to this day, I'm forever grateful for that because I never thought that that was something that I would do, and they literally made me do it at a couple of events. They were like, "No, Robert, you're going to speak here."
Mm-hmm.
Coach Tim Beck, he is the coach, offensive coordinator of Vanderbilt. He actually beat Alabama this year.
Yeah, he did.
And he's gonna have a shot to do something good. Shout out to Coach Beck. He literally didn't give me an option. Like you're gonna speak at this health establishment that we're going. And then he said, now you're gonna speak to our team. And now you're gonna speak to our freshmen. And now you're gonna do this, and create that passion for me. And then at that point, my motto is too big to stop, right? It's if something is big for you, nothing can stop you. So when I lost football, I never took school serious. I never took school serious. Like, I think I got like a C average or something like that. Until I lost football, and then my GPA went up, and then I started looking at things I really wanted to do. I looked up to find something called occupational therapy. I couldn't get into that because I wasn't smart enough. I'm honest with myself. I tried, but I couldn't get into schools because I jacked around in school too much. So kids, take school serious every step of the way. So I ended up finding something called behavior analyst, right? BCBA. And this is what I call a touchdown pass. It's a career that I can contract directly with the state. You don't need an employer. You don't need anybody. And it's ultimately teaching people how to successfully win in life by doing the small things. And then that's also what I do with speaking. I really came out on top of this. I'm really lucky. I'm really blessed to come out on top of this. And I do feel like I redeemed myself. It still gets to me sometimes. It still gets to me. I'll be lying if I didn't. I look at the players and say, man, I can do that move. I mean, probably not now. I probably rip my esophagus. I don't know. But I say, man. But then I think that, hey, I'm being put here for a reason, man. I got two beautiful daughters. My daughters are gorgeous. They are my little queens. I am their protector. And I do feel like I redeemed myself. I feel like the story would have been sweeter if I would have, but I'm happy. And that's the ultimate thing.
Do we still have your mom around?
Yes, my mom is around. My mom's birthday was yesterday. We're actually going to go out to eat.
That's awesome.
Yes, we're gonna go out to eat tomorrow. I mean, on Friday. She's gonna make me pay for it. Which
Rightfully
that's
so.
okay. Yeah, that's rightfully so. Anytime she needs things, she comes to me. She thinks that I must have made it to the league because she thinks that I always got this money on me.
Well,
But I make sure she take care of.
she's got to be proud of you though.
Yeah, she is. She is. I always say, I'm an only son, so we got this thing where she be like, "Oh, that's my favorite son," and I'm like, "Mom, I'm your only son."
Man,
So
that's so
yeah,
awesome.
I
Well,
love
hey
it, man.
Robert, this has been awesome. Your story is amazing. I'm glad that you did come out on top. You've been through a lot, and I wish you all the best, man. This has been a lot of fun, and it's been inspiring. I'm sure for a lot of people, it's an underdog story for sure in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and the number one thing I want, people to grasp onto the story doesn't have to end how you intended it to end in the beginning.
Hmm. Yep.
There are several pathways to winning. You just can't stop scratching and clawing and reaching until you figure that out. Just because you don't reach that goal that you initially set doesn't mean that there is another goal that you can't reach and still win and still be successful. So you just got to keep on scratching because whatever you want in life, and I say this is what I walk around, it is too big to stop. If it's big to you, then do not stop.
Awesome stuff, Robert McField. Thanks a lot for joining me. I appreciate it.
No problem, Chris. I appreciate it.